Wow, that was pretty crazy. That was one of the most intense individual trading sessions that we've had in quite a while, and in this video, I'll be breaking it all down. I'll be explaining what was going on under the hood in the overall market. I'll be touching on some of the breaking news that you might have missed, but most importantly, I'll be explaining what to pay attention to tomorrow. We got some big news, and also what you might want to be paying attention to for the remainder of this week. Of course, if you enjoy these types of daily market breakdowns, let me know by hitting that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, say what's up in the comments. With that being said, let's rock. By the time the world's largest casino officially closed on the day, here was the headline. Dow slides more than 300 points as Trump tariffs rattle stocks for a third day. The word rattle stocks does not even begin to explain what happened, but before we get into that, I want to show you a little bit of surprise. I feel like recently when I've been showing you the S&P 500 heat map, it's been all blood red, and now it's more of this Christmas vibe. I see some red, I see some green, so there was a little bit of a recovery, a little bit of constructive price momentum today, but it didn't really feel like that. Now, to better explain what happened today, I need to rewind a little bit, at least to the futures market open yesterday, Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And right away, people thought it was going to be bad because we opened at a 1.76% gap down. And at the most extreme, we were down around 5%, and it really wasn't improving much in the overnight session. And then for those of you who are hardcore degenerates checking out the overseas markets, you knew it was brutal. China's stock market suffers worst single-day crash since 2008. It was down in excess of 13%, and it really didn't stop there. If you look at Taiwan's market, there were circuit breaker halts that was down about 9.5%. Japan's market down in excess of 8%. It was brutal in overseas trading hours. And then eventually, among all that chaos, we got to the start of the US trading session, where at first there was a bit of weakness, obviously adding on to some of those overnight losses. And then out of nowhere, we had not just a pop, but we had a massive pop. I know it might not seem like this on the chart, but let me clarify. We had a 1.4% drop. A singular day moving 1.4% is kind of a big deal. And then from that low, we ran about 8.5%. From that 8.5% pop, then we dropped about 5.8%. And then from that drop into close, we gained about another 2%. Obviously, it's safe to say that volatility is here, and it is apparently here to stay. At the end of the day, the SPY was slightly red while the Qs were slightly green. Volatility up a decent amount, hanging out just below 50. And we actually have the small cap sector locking in a small loss on the day. So you might be thinking, hey, I get it. We're in the middle of a trade war. Volatility is high. The overnight session was absolutely brutal, but still, these swings seem a lot bigger than even anyone would anticipate, and you are 100% right. This is part of the reason why I hate lamestream media. At 10:15, it was reported breaking. According to the White House senior advisor Hassett, Trump is mulling a 90-day pause on tariffs aside from China. And then right after that, around 10:45, about 30 minutes later, White House tells CNBC 90-day pause on tariffs is fake news. Now you might be thinking, oh, okay, how much can really go wrong in about 30 minutes of trading? And the answer is trillions of dollars worth. So right here, we have rumor emerge of a 90-day tariff pause, and that's when we started to pump. CNBC reports that Trump is considering a tariff pause, and that's when we really got going. The S&P 500 adds $3 trillion from the low of the day. That was that 8.5% rally. And then a little bit after that, CNBC reports that White House is quote-unquote unaware of a 90-day tariff pause. And not much after that, White House calls tariff pause headlines fake news, and very quickly the S&P 500 erased $2.5 trillion. That all happened in half an hour. That all happened in the exact same time that you're like, yeah, I'm going to go on the treadmill, do a little bit of run, maybe watch a sitcom. In that entire time, we ripped 8.5%, we dropped 6%, we added $3 trillion, we dropped $2.5 trillion, all because of fake news. That's the insane environment we're in right now. And now, just to add a little bit of insult to injury, I'm going to play the actual clip that turned into that headline that then the White House had to deny, and I'll let you be the judge of did they interpret it properly.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. There are more than 50 countries in negotiation with the president.
I think the president is going to decide what the president is going to decide. That is verbatim the quote that was clearly misinterpreted, reported by everyone and their mother to send the market sky high just to say, what in the world are you talking about? to prompt this dump. Obviously, I am not angry whatsoever. Totally doesn't bother me, except for the fact that it costs me a lot of money. Fear not, there's going to be plenty of opportunity to make some of that lost money back because it looks like volatility is here to stay. This is from Trump himself. Yesterday, China issued retaliatory tariffs of 34% on top of their already record-setting tariffs, non-monetary tariffs, illegal subsidization of companies, and massive long-term currency manipulation, despite my warning that any country that retaliates against the US by issuing additional tariffs above and beyond their already existing long-term tariffs, abuse of our nation will be immediately met with new substantially higher tariffs over above the initially set. Therefore, and this is the important part, if China does not withdraw its 34% increase above their already long-term trading abuse by tomorrow, April 8th, folks, that is tomorrow, Tuesday, April the 8th, the US will impose additional tariffs on China at 50% effective the very next day, April the 9th. And to make the entire situation a bit more spicy, right after that, we got this. President Trump says all talks with China concerning requested meetings with the US will be terminated. I mean, what a way to set an ultimatum.
You better fix your tariffs, and we're going to give you till tomorrow. And in the meantime, we're not talking to you at all.
I should note that that ultimatum of we're not going to talk didn't really last for long because a couple hours later, we got this, according to Trump, we will talk to China. And in all reality, I hope that they do. This is a very serious situation. Beijing's strong counter tariffs raise the specter of an intense trade war with Washington. Risks of an intense US-China trade war are rising rapidly after Beijing responded more forcefully than many had expected to US President Donald Trump's latest tariffs. In a shift in tone, China has dropped its calls for negotiation on trade in a weekend statement that condemned US levies, raising the prospects of an extended period of trade escalation. Well, folks, we're in that period, and we're apparently going to be finding out a bit more tomorrow. But wait, there's more. Remember, it's not just China that Trump put tariffs on. It's pretty much every other country in the world, even some of our largest trading partners, including the EU. EU prefers negotiation on US tariffs, but readies its first retaliation, and we did get more info on that. The EU is proposing to impose 25% tariffs on a selection of US goods in retaliation to the president's decision last month to put levies on aluminum and steel imports. So very clearly, we're not heading in the right direction with China and the EU, but we are making some progress with other countries, including Japan. The Trump administration will begin negotiations with Japan, being led by the Treasury Secretary. Following a very constructive phone call with the government of Japan, President Trump has tasked me to open negotiations to implement the president's vision for the new golden age of global trade with, unfortunately, a name that I'll never be able to pronounce, and his cabinet. And adding onto that little blip of positive news, we also heard from the Israel president today, we will eliminate the trade deficit with the US. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do, and we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, and I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. Now, I have to admit, Trump's immediate follow-up was pretty funny. Trump on reducing tariffs on Israel? Maybe not. I think it's pretty clear that we have a little bit of bullish news, a decent amount of bearish news, and a high amount of uncertainty, which is exactly why the market is still feeling quite a bit of pain. Today, officially at close from the all-time high, we are down 17.6%, but I should let you know, at today's extreme, the low of the day, we were officially in the bear market territory, being down 21.3%. Even more wild than that was the fact that the options market, when looking at the S&P 500 and then the tech sector, in no way agreed. On the screen right now, you can see the options flow for the S&P 500 complex. Very bearish, very negative. The delta puked more, and then just stayed flat for the remainder of the day. But then if you look at the Mag 7, completely different story. From market open till the end of the day, the options flow was absurdly bullish. This is a giant mismatch because remember, the Mag 7 players, Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla make up the lion's share of the NASDAQ 100 and the S&P 500. So it's very odd that we saw strong bets there, yet the overall market was actually seeing really weak bets. So like I said, a big mismatch, which I just think truly represents the uncertainty of the current moment. And speaking of the current moment, we got a pretty wild update today from Larry Fink at BlackRock. Breaking, BlackRock CEO says he will not rule out another 20% stock market decline. Ouch. That's pretty painful on top of the fact that we've already dropped 17%. So you get it. The market is in pure chaos. Uncertainty is at a max level. No one knows what's going on, but we do know in the short term there are some key things that you need to pay attention to. So please just give me 30 more seconds of your time. Breaking: President Trump says he's quote unquote not looking at that when asked about pausing tariffs. So if you were hoping for a pause midweek, sounds like it's not going to happen. We also know that according to Trump, tariffs could be permanent and could also be talks, as in they don't necessarily have to go away. And then right at the end of the day, when President Trump was asked about China and their tariffs, we heard if China does not reverse its 34% retaliatory tariff, which I covered earlier, by 12 p.m. tomorrow, we will institute an additional 50%. So basically, the lunch hour tomorrow is not going to be as calm and quiet as you might want it to be. And then just to wrap this all up, let me read one final thing that I hope explains what's going on in President Trump's mind. President Trump says the trade war goes beyond tariffs and includes quote unquote non-monetary barriers. He explained how the EU makes it quote unquote very hard to sell a product due to regulations. It appears President Trump is seeking more than just the elimination of tariffs on US products. Personally, I think that that's pretty telling on the mindset of the administration and what their goals truly are. Anyway, that's what I have for you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the good vibes. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.